Hi, everyone, and welcome into Don't Tell Me How to Fan. My name is Josh Albrecht. That's John Taylor. And boy, do we got a lot of awesome stuff to talk about today. So, first and foremost, at the time of this recording of this episode of Don't Tell Me How to Fan, we found out that Giannis is not leaving. He's not leaving.
That's right. He's not leaving. Yeah. Interesting little timeline of the last 24 plus hours at the time.
John, I just got to start by saying I was so happy. I'm still so happy, but I've never scrolled with a permanent smile on my face as long as I did from noon to 2 on Thursday. Just from the time that Shams had to put out that tweet saying, yeah, the Bucks aren't going to move Giannis, to the official 2 p.m. Central end of the deadline. It was nothing but going back, bringing up receipts, and just looking at all the posts that had happened and just clowning him and Windhorse and everyone else that said, well, per source, big news, Nothing happened.
Well, what's interesting is a lot of these guys are reporting stuff, and it's turned into a situation where we're not even hearing per sources. It's like everything is like, I'm getting the idea, I'm getting the inclination. It's like they're not even they're not even naming unnamed sources anymore. They're getting impressions. You know what I mean? It's like, well, here's my impressions. Like, your impressions are just your thoughts. What are we reporting here? What's the actual report? Where's the journalism in these guys just standing on these panels? And the answer is there is none. It's like all of these guys that are on ESPN are also basically sharing the same agents the players are having. They're all getting told to push narratives. Sports media, on a national level, is in a really bleak spot. And it is 100% obvious and apparent by specifically this Giannis stuff. And it's been pretty insidious and nasty for a while, but this year specifically, I think there was a lot of conversations being pushed in the national space by people who have no business doing it. And they're not doing enough actual reporting or journalism in general. And that is not exactly the tangent I wanted to find myself in, but boy, is it really frustrating when you just, like you said, take a step back and look at the entire chain of events to hear how this was reported as recently as 2 weeks ago compared to how today went,
Yeah.
Thursday.
It was hell. Let's just call it. It was hell watching these reports, and everyone had to one up each other. So does this make sense for the Bucks to move on from Giannis? To why are the Bucks forcing Giannis in this position? Why won't the Bucks let Giannis go and be happy? Giannis isn't happy in Milwaukee. All of these things. And then we had the local Eric Name, Jim Ozarski, the local reporters come out. They actually talk to Giannis, right? It's not per sources of what I'm hearing from this team or the Bucks or whoever. It's just from Giannis. Completely different narrative. I mean, just completely different.
Yep.
The same thing that they've reported for a while, but completely different than what we heard from anyone in the national media. Then everything starts falling apart for these national pundits. And by, like I said, noon Central, it was done. It was all done. It was done at that point.
Yeah, I mean, my anxiety actually started earlier than today. Bobby Marks, who is pretty dialed in. I respect he does a lot softer reporting and just kind of states facts a little more plainly. He just straight up was like, if a Giannis deal doesn't happen by midnight tonight, I just don't see how they can make that big of a trade work within the trade deadline timeline of Thursday. Specifically just saying that it would have involved three teams to get all of the picks the Bucks would have wanted. There just would have been so much orchestration that to agree upon a deal today and then also try to make that deal work seemed like an impossibility. And so I was watching yesterday's game just thinking man, I can't believe that this could potentially be the last time Giannis is even affiliated with the Bucks during his career. And I was like, he's just on the side. It made me so much sadder than I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. It's it's anger towards the media, how much I love Giannis, all of this stuff. I just was this is so depressing. And I understand the path that the Bucks took that led us here, back to back disappointing first round exits. You talk about pushing your chips all in, taking risks, not drafting well, blah, blah. I understand all of that. But at the end of the day, I was watching Giannis sit on the sideline, not playing. And I was like, is this the last time he's a Buck? Like, oh, it would have, so I'm feeling all kinds of emotions. Like him sticking around is not a guaranteed deal that they don't move on from him this summer or he doesn't ask out. But at least right now, and assuming Brian Windhorst is continuing to be full of crap, he is going to play another game as a Buck before the season ends if we can trust Eric Name, if we can trust the Bucks organization, if we can trust, and this one's a pretty big if, so I'm not mad at anybody in Milwaukee, Doc Rivers saying, like, we plan on playing Giannis this year, then at least we get another game with Giannis suited up as a Buck. Because the idea that he was going to get traded somewhere and the last time he was on the court was him getting injured, that is a total heartbreaker, in my opinion.
Well, and we're going to talk about the state of the Bucks and what happens going forward in a little bit. But I want to just focus in on how this all played out and Giannis and just who he is. So for those of you that don't listen in to the morning show that I do with Trevor Thomas inside Wisconsin Sports with Trevor and Josh, it's been a very frustrating week and a half, even longer, because I mean, if you go back to the beginning of this, John, I was honestly blown away by how many Bucks fans legitimately were like, I think this is it this time. Like they bought this narrative that we had seen so many times before, and they were like, no, you don't understand. This time it's real. And they started turning on Giannis and saying like, well, if Giannis doesn't want to be here, then good riddance. And I'm like, when did he say that? Like, you're just buying into what Shams and Windhorst and all these other guys are saying. Well, where are they getting that information? It has to be from Giannis's agent. Giannis's agent is telling them to say this so that he can. Is he? Are they? When was that confirmed? None of that was ever none of it. And it was just crazy to me that all of a sudden, so many people in a fan base that had been defending Giannis against the national media for so long, this was the time where they were like, I can't take it anymore. Giannis needs to go. It's time, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
To then today, when the news breaks that he's not going to be traded, at least for now, and then after the trade deadline officially happens, Giannis posts that clip from the movie The Wolf of Wall Street where he says, I'm not leaving. And that to me said one of two things. First, for sure, it said he hates these national narrative BS just as much as the rest of us. And he loved the idea of being able to put that as a big middle finger to all of it, to all of the national stories trying to tear him apart, to tear apart his legacy, to tear apart what he's tried for so long to put out there as who he is. And we only see that at a local level because we know Giannis. I understand if you don't follow the Bucks at a national level, you don't understand. You're just looking at who he is as a basketball player, and you're going, why would a basketball player want to play in Milwaukee when he could play anywhere else but Milwaukee? That's not Giannis. That's not the situation.
Yeah, and he said as much to Eric and Jim when he talks about his life here, about how he doesn't get bothered on the street. Like I think information that he broke that I don't think many people realize is his father is buried in Milwaukee apparently. Like that is like he will make at least a trip to Milwaukee every so often, even after he retires, because of the fact, right? He talks about how like his memories of his homeland are just like being hungry, being poor, selling stuff, playing practicing basketball. And it's like he talks about the life that he made in Milwaukee. And I think like to your point, like the fans turn on him, and I just want to go back to that for a second, is really sad because at no point has he ever done or said anything to give the impression that he wouldn't have been more outright if he wanted out. And I think I can say that more confidently now that like he posted that I'm not leaving. He said legends attract, they don't chase, which I think is an even more telling part than the Wolf of Wall Street clip. And we'll talk about that, what goes on moving forward. But I just think like he loves the city, and he needs to be and it's okay that he needs to re-fall in love with the Milwaukee Bucks every year. I keep going back to that. Like, if he rests on his hands and says, you know what, we can take a gap year, and the situation isn't where we are at right now in this moment, then I think like that is a failure of a one of one type of human. And so I just don't, I didn't love all of it. I had a lot of friends just tell me like they should just trade him and get over it. Like he's being a diva. And I was like, nothing about this is diva. Like what you just want him to say, like, I'm not going to, I don't want to trade, or I'm not leaving, or it's like, he said all of those things, but he also was like, it's not in my hands. It's not in my control. And it's like, you know, he is always going to apply leverage on the Bucks. And now they have 6 more months to devise a plan to make sure that he is bought in and signs the extension. That's the next step in this. He's still on the team, so now they got to keep moving forward. But yeah,
and you nailed it on the head there talking about that. But it's when if Giannis ever is not in Milwaukee, it is going to be a very, very hard day for him. People don't realize, for this type of player specifically, for who Giannis is, what makes Giannis different, why ever leaving Milwaukee is going to be such a hard decision. It is not a situation where he can just go, yeah, I don't want to play for the Bucks anymore. I want to make money and be in Miami. Like, he loves it here. He invested everything here. So even if he does end up moving and he goes, my need to be a competitor is outweighing my need to stay in Milwaukee, that is going to be a really tough decision for him. And I don't think he'll make it lightly. So even if it becomes the fact that he doesn't sign the extension, he doesn't sign the Supermax, I'm telling you, that's not going to be an easy day for him either. Obviously, it'll be a hard day for us as Bucks fans, and more importantly, Giannis fans. But if you're someone that thinks, well, yeah, because he'll go get paid somewhere else and it's warmer in Miami or whatever it ends up being, you know, there's bigger crowds in New York or whatever he decides, that's not going to be the narrative. I don't think he legitimately cares where he would play. He wants to be competitive. He said that. He said that to Jimmy O. The difference is that he also really, really wants to just stay in Milwaukee. This is not an easy thing for him to be dealing with any more than it is us. Obviously, he has more control of it than we do as the fan base, but I think that's an important thing to know too, is that this is not something like we can compare to any other athlete, especially in Milwaukee, because we're so used to people leaving. When was the last time any athlete has ever legitimately been like, damn, I really don't want to leave Milwaukee? Like, it's always been, well, it's small market. They can't pay me enough. They can't, I have, for my career, it's better to keep moving. Those have always been the narratives. Prince Fielder, I mean, just go throughout history of Milwaukee teams. That's always been the case. And so he's different. He's the one that's different. And people need to realize that. And regardless of what happens, appreciate who he is in that way. Whether he does end up moving on or finishes his career here, he is the different one. He's the one who stayed.
Yeah. Well, we got some clarity. When we come back from break, we can discuss what does the rest of the season look like? How did the trade deadline actually go for the Bucks? And what they can do to convince them.
Giannis is still a Milwaukee Buck for at least the time being, and we are hoping we are going to get to see him play another game in a Bucks uniform, at least one. Already conflicting reports of if the Bucks are going to shut down Giannis for the rest of the season or if he will play when he comes back from injury. But John, let's talk about what happened at the trade deadline around the league for the Bucks and what really this means for the Bucks going forward the rest of this year and how that leads into what the Bucks do next with or without Giannis.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody was waiting on bated breath all morning, was waiting to see what trade news. And the first news about the Bucks came out via Shams Charania. I think I don't really care about what time it was, but he basically said the Milwaukee Bucks have indicated to teams that they are keeping Giannis Antetokounmpo through the trade deadline and will start making other trade sources, tells ESPN. Within 1 minute of that, he breaks this tweet. Milwaukee Bucks have agreed to trade Cole Anthony and Amir Coffey to the Phoenix Suns for Nick Richards and Nigel Hayes-Davis. Sources tell ESPN. Nigel Hayes-Davis being a former Badger, so people in the area might remember him well. He has not been great. Has spent the last several seasons outside of the NBA. And he got brought into the Phoenix organization this past summer. And besides a few flashes, has not really been much of anything. Nick Richards is a center, which was perplexing at the time. On first hearing of this news, we'll talk about this trade exactly like this. This is the trade that was reported 8 hours ago on Thursday. What was your initial reaction to this trade?
It was, honestly, for me, it was just hilarity that Shams had to go out and put out a Bucks tweet that had nothing to do with Giannis. I didn't think that the trade in general really moved any meter in any way, shape, or form. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around how I'm supposed to be fanning right now with the Bucks, because I want them to lose so that Giannis stays and then they can win. So does
suspend right now. You're living in the 30 minutes this news broke. All right, so there's no time to think about the future. Just in a vacuum. That's the move.
No clue. Didn't care.
Great. Yeah, I'm right with you. I think there were different points where Nick Richards, I think, would have made sense for the Bucks. And that was before we waived Dame, as a potential big man option. You look at our lineup and we go, it's pretty crowded in the big man. I don't really know what that's all about. The thing that perplexed me about this trade, and it's been talked about a lot, is we sent out 2 vet min contracts in Amir Coffey and Cole Anthony. Cole Anthony was just never going to be able to be the player we needed as a third point guard off the bench. He had some fun flashes earlier in the year, but any sort of prolonged run, he's too small, he's undersized, and that's kind of the MO of all of our point guards. So I was not heartbreaking to see him go. Amir Coffey, I kind of forgot he was on the team until they started starting him the last several games.
Right.
You now see that they were starting him to get people to see that he could still play basketball in the NBA. So no harm, no foul. I don't love that Amir Coffey, after the Taurean Prince injury, seemed to be the only small forward that is actually on this basketball team. So sending him out felt a little bad. But yeah, like I said, it's two vet min contracts to Phoenix, Arizona, to the Suns. And they actually send a little more in salary, which helps them duck the apron. So a lot of people were reporting, our buddy Ty over at GSPN, the Eurostep Podcast Network. I mean, the whole conversation, he's just bringing it up a lot online, was like, where's the picks? Like, we're helping them duck the tax. Like, where's the extra compensation? And that never came, sadly.
No.
And I think around that time, for me personally, a lot of it was like, okay, they might reroute some of these guys. Maybe they're just needing to take some different players in to like help move, like maybe like a Bobby Portis or like a Kyle Kuzma. Let's see what's going on. Nope, nothing happened. Not only with this trade, it just was a straight up 2-for-2 players. There were no picks attached. So I wasn't loving the trade. Fast forward 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours. It truly was
3 hours later.
Yeah, 3 hours later, right before the trade line ended. Shams hopped back on the old X machine and said they expanded the earlier trade involving Cole Anthony to a 3-team deal, including the Chicago Bulls, which rerouted Nick Richards actually to the Bulls, which makes sense because they have 11 guards and now they have one center named Nick Richards. And they sent us Ousmane Dieng, formerly of the Oklahoma City Thunder. So that's cool. I'm intrigued by that a lot more.
Okay.
What was your thoughts on that part?
My thoughts were still okay. Is cool. So now we have this guy. I really can't explain enough how my brain through all of this was either trying to figure out them shipping off pieces that were already on this team that I felt needed to go, or just tying everything back to how does this set up the team to convince Giannis, hey, we're going to be better next season. Yeah. And I don't know enough about either of those guys to say confidently this is the start of a good plan to convince Giannis to sign that Supermax in the offseason. It just, it didn't. So I just
the good news is there's a lot of expiring. I think like ultimately what this all moved. And just to talk about Ousmane Dieng, he was like the Oklahoma City Thunder's like 15th player. He truly did not get a lot of minutes at all in his time at Oklahoma City. He was the 11th overall pick. He's kind of like a 3-4 skewing like kind of 4. So you're still talking about not like a true small forward. However, he's only 22 years old. The fact that you kind of get this guy out of all of the pieces that moved around in this trade, I'm high on that, just given the fact that like he's still so young, he could develop into something. He is already an NBA champion, so that's
True.
interesting.
True. He's been there.
This year he's averaging 3.5 points on 1.5 rebounds. But like I said, he was buried on a Thunder team that it just didn't matter.
Right.
And
what
so
were his minutes and shot selection through that? Right.
yeah. So we'll see. I think it's like whatever numbers it's like small sample size theater. I think like there's flashes. I think he could be more aggressive finishing around the basket, for a guy as long as he is. Like you'd like to see him become a little bit more of a presence in the post. But I know a guy who's pretty good at being dominant in the post who might be able to teach him a thing or two.
Yeah.
Thanasis.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly
Because
right.
he's the only guy with enough free time to actually do it. No, all jokes aside, I like the move. If you're trying to just, I don't love that no picks ultimately came this way. But when you look at like a trade deadline that didn't see Bobby Portis leave, a trade deadline that Kyle Kuzma didn't leave, a trade deadline that John Morant didn't move, you start looking at all the teams and the trades that were made. And it was just like a really weird trade deadline. So we don't have to stick on it too much longer. I'll just say like, I would have liked to have seen them trade more people. I was very vocal about that, but Giannis's post talking about wanting to attract talent here makes me think maybe they let a lot of these contracts expire. They sort all of that out in the offseason, and then they have their first round pick next year. They have access to like 3 more first round picks that they didn't this year. So really all of this was like, what can you do right now to keep Giannis here? And I think secretly or sneakily, his injury, this most recent one, probably kept him here because he's been injured so much. He's not in any sort of award contention anymore. It's probably the first year he doesn't make all pro, sadly. And he's not eligible for it. So it doesn't, I already said that, but I just mean in general. And I don't, his play was fantastic to start, but he's been playing so injured. His injury goes, the Bucks go, what do you want us to do? Like, we can't win with you on the court. Like we're definitely not winning without you on the court. And if he misses enough time, then this season's already kind of over. So it allows for them to tank, like you keep asking. But also it allows for them to say, let's just, instead of pushing the few chips we have right now, let's wait for, this is a bad analogy, but like whatever cash injection we can get by the way of first round picks, let's go find a star you can play alongside in the off season. And I think that is a real selling point to a guy who, like you said, we discussed in the whole first block, like we don't want to see leave Milwaukee. I don't think he wants to leave Milwaukee. He just wants to be competitive. And this little dip in this season, no matter how it turns out, using those assets, using those picks, letting contracts go to get more access to just straight up salary cap, I think that's how you create a plan to keep Giannis excited moving forward.
So this brings me to this tanking thing. Okay, so the Bucks have a first round pick in the upcoming draft. That pick, if it is a better pick than the Pelicans, will be the Pelicans pick, and they will swap. But they will get a pick. The Pelicans are also doing pretty bad.
They're terrible. They might be the worst team in the league. So
correct. So there's a chance that both the Bucks and the Pelicans are near the top of the picking order in the upcoming NBA draft when it happens. I love the idea of it, right? If it happens and they can get a good pick and they can bring that pick in and that is enticing to Giannis. Hey, here's a new guy, young kid that we're going to bring in too, that's going to be a piece building around you. That should also help be enticing to him signing the Supermax, etc. I don't know that I fully buy that Giannis is going to be like, yeah, let's tank. Okay, good call. Like, I'll just play a few games and then rest or whatever it ends up being. Like, I don't know that I see him being able to do that. And we see this a lot in the NFL where we go, wow, that team was so stupid. Why did they play so hard and win that game in the last week of the season? Now they just lost the number 1 pick. I'm having a hard time knowing who Giannis is as a competitor, seeing him not want to play and seeing him not want to play competitively, and that the Bucks are going to end up like with like the 11th or 12th pick and it's going to be like, crap. No, that's not what we wanted. That's not what we need. That's not good enough. And now this number one pick we have ends up being, just like a lot of the number one picks the Bucks have had, that ends up being a guy that either rides the bench, ends up in the G League, just isn't that type of player that Giannis needs around him to say, yeah, the future is still bright in Milwaukee. So I need to know, as I'm watching Bucks games, how do I have that mentality? And can you, John, give me faith that the Bucks are going to be able to successfully tank?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 reasons. One, they're barely 500 with Giannis playing. The team around him has been pretty bad. So it's going to be an uphill climb, him coming off of this injury and just assuming that they're going to start printing wins because they weren't doing it with him beforehand. Number 2, Doc Rivers is still the head coach of this basketball team. And that probably should have been number 1, but it's funnier to do it this way. Doc Rivers is still the coach of this basketball team until proven otherwise. I think he's our fearless tank leader. It's very obvious he is not interested in changing anything. So if we didn't change the players and we didn't change the coach and the coach doesn't change the scheme, why do you think the results of the games are going to change? That's why I feel good about this. It's like you just stay the course. If you can find, I think like the other thing we didn't really talk about is I think like Dixon Hayes probably gets waived. Pete Nance has been like a revelation. He needs to be on this roster. That's an obvious choice. There's some things you can do that you can get excited about. You can see what young guys have, but at the end of the day, this team ain't winning stuff, even with Giannis on the court, because Doc isn't going to put Giannis in a position to actually meaningfully affect change. You look at like the point forward comments that, Giannis was excited about heading into the season. After he got injured the first time, they moved away from that. And, now he's talking about how it's gotten really selfish. He feels like he's not getting enough shots up. It's like, well, I don't think that stuff's going to change, especially since he announced he's not leaving. So, I mean, he still could, but I think like this year, it's like, I look at it 2 ways. They're going to keep losing because the roster sucks and they didn't do enough to change it. And they didn't do enough to change it because I think they didn't want to lose any draft capital, assets, tradable contracts until this offseason where they can really go push something. So if nothing else, I hope they play terribly. There's some, if you ever go on like Tankathon, you can like sim the lottery. There's ways for the Bucks to get up to like pick 3, 4, 5 and have the Hornets still be bad enough that they are ahead of them and they get to keep that pick. Incredible. Would love to see them draft one of these top 5 guys. Apparently this draft is absolutely incredible. What I will say to the counter is there's a very real chance that pick never comes close to being a consideration for Horst, and they package that with something like they've always done to bring in somebody that they think they can be competitive alongside Giannis. And you look at like how Ryan Rollins has developed, how he's still under contract. AJ Green's been doing okay. You got to get rid of a bunch of dead weight in the form of like Gary Trent Jr. and Bobby Portis and Jericho Sims. Like there's so much on this roster that just needs to go, but it doesn't need to go right now because those pieces can't win to save their lives. So no worries that way. We are on like a 3-game winning streak, which is funny, but ultimately it is what it is.
Welcome back to Don't Tell Me How to Fan. Josh Albrecht, John Taylor, and John. Obviously, the big news is the Bucks and Giannis. And we just got done. So far in the show, we've talked about just everything that happened with the trade deadline and Giannis. Then we talked about kind of the state of the Bucks and what they should do. I want to quickly, before we move on to the Super Bowl, just kind of ask you. So, what do you think at this point? And because I do think that the stories have changed, and we don't really know where Giannis's head is at if he thinks the Bucks can be competitive. But do you think that he ends up signing the Supermax? Do you think that the Bucks are able to put something together that has him sign that Supermax? And more importantly, do you believe that still gives the Bucks the best chance to win? Because before you answer, and I'll ask a question then talk more, but I love Giannis, and I have Giannis goggles on. Okay. And so I would rather see Giannis play here for the rest of his career and hope that Giannis still gives us the best chance than ever move on from Giannis and think maybe that is what helps the Bucks. It's risk either way. I'd rather have the risk with Giannis than without for the rest of the time he plays basketball.
Yeah. I can think of 275 million reasons why Giannis would sign that
Sure.
extension.
But also, he's got a lot of money. He's got a lot
I
of money.
mean, yeah, but you know, there's a reason why that contract is so much more lucrative if you stay with your team than if you try to go find something else elsewhere in free agency. There's like a
How much
mechanism
more
in
is it?
place.
Do you know?
Not off the top of my head. But I will say this. That's a hell of a contract to get at your age 32, like age 32, what 16th season in the NBA, 14th, whatever the math is. We've been talking a lot of numbers this podcast. That's first and foremost. I think, and obviously he wants it to be competitive. So if they're, I think as long as the Bucks, the real answer is as long as the Bucks go, here are concrete players we're going to go after. Here's how we can reshape this roster. Here's players we can add. Here's players who we're willing to go get. Here's the resources we have to try and go get these players. I think that would go a long way for Giannis. And I don't know if I would have said the same thing yesterday or if he didn't post so triumphantly post trade deadline that he was still here and he was still bought in. Truthfully, I think that speaks volumes. I would say this trade deadline was very whatever until Giannis posted that post on Instagram and then on the rest of his social media. And then this trade deadline became awesome. So I will say, like, I think he wants to find good in the Bucks organization. I think he wants that to happen. And so I don't think it's going to be as hard as you think. There's plenty of contracts. Players are always moving and changing. And I think like this team is going to have to look vastly different. So I don't have a great answer right now, but I will say, I just think if you start losing players, you got to add players. If you can free up money, like Kuzma's contract, Bobby's contract, those are all pretty nice sized pieces to go try and find you something, even with Dame's dead cap hit. So, nothing's guaranteed. He talks about it all the time, how he likes his eggs or if he'll stay faithful to his wife. That's a joke. I'm just joking, but it is funny to me how his example keeps being with like his relationship with his partner, but nothing's promised. And the Bucks could also look at this and go, hey, yeah, it's too far gone. Let's go try to find you a new place and let's get some real assets in return. So this isn't the final step.
I still don't think that that's based off of everything that happened today. And then Giannis putting out that video. To me, this just ended up becoming an ultimate troll job by John Horst and the Bucks. Well,
let me actually answer your question because I have Giannis glasses too. I'd rather never win a championship with Giannis than be in a rebuild without Giannis. I just don't think either way. I think that like the likelihood of the Bucks winning another championship before Giannis retires in the league is so small. It gets significantly smaller if he's not on the team. And if he's okay with being competitive and thinks that he just needs more cracks at it, then it's like, I said this before this year too. It's like, I don't trust anyone more than I trust Giannis to play competitive basketball. So if you're telling me he's happy about the team that he wants around it, it's like, great. I don't want to root for Giannis on another basketball team. I don't know if I can. I'm a Bucks fan first and foremost. Giannis might be the only person I would actually go follow somewhere else, but I would still be rooting for the Bucks. I'm not just a Giannis fan, but I'll tell you what, Giannis being a Buck has made my life very easy for the last 13 years, and I'd like it to stay that way as long as possible. In terms of the Bucks and the troll job you're talking about, I don't know. I think like Giannis never wanted out. As recently as Chris Haynes, the guy that was leaking everything from the locker room last year, he said he never requested a trade. And so if that's true, then, the Bucks still have to do their due diligence. Because what happens if they get a god-tier trade package and they go to Giannis, hey, do you want to go play for this team? Like, this is going to rapidly get us back into contention if we take it. That's the organization doing their due diligence. And I'm not going to fault them for that. They can't blindly be put in a spot where they're, caught with their pants down if Giannis does request a trade and they haven't been active in trying to find the best spot for that to happen. So I don't think this summer, I don't
John, my point is, do you think that now post trade deadline that Giannis and the Bucks are more on the same page with each other than the national media was leading on that they weren't?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But that's because neither side would just come out and say, like, no trade request has been. I mean, when was the last time you saw John Horst in public?
Right.
It might be Bill and Ted Excellence GM adventure for all we know. But I don't know. That's a great question. No, I think the Bucks and Giannis are more aligned. And that doesn't mean perfect or happy-go-lucky, but I think they're both in agreement that they want more time to see what can happen. And I think that as a Packers, Bucks, Brewers fan, whoopsies, that's all you can ask for. Milwaukee Wave, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. On Wisconsin.
Yeah.
All right. So Giannis is the best. He's my favorite forever. I love him, and he's amazing. The Super Bowl is happening. Super Bowl 60. I'd like to start by saying, geez, it seems like when they say 60, I had the thought of like, you know how they say like UFC 145. I was like, man, at some point they're going to be like, welcome to Super Bowl 112. And I'm like, oh my gosh. It's just, I understand that's not for a long time, but when they said 60, I was like, wow, okay, we're getting a lot of Super Bowls. The Super Bowl, Patriots, Seahawks. We've been trying to find some juice locally, something that makes me care about it. The only thing that's really there is the GM, two people that came from the Ron Wolf tree and their ties back to the Packers organization. Otherwise, man, I can't tell you how much I really have no skin in this game at all.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's tough. It's two teams nobody was expecting, and I just think it's two teams nobody cares.
Nobody wants. I feel like
that's the impression I get.
Yeah.
And like I said, every once in a while, I remind the viewers or the listeners, hopefully it's not every episode, that I live in Portland, Oregon. I am a 3-hour drive from Seattle.
Yeah.
The Seahawks are the team people in Oregon root for. Does not feel like their team is going to the Super Bowl.
So you're saying
Sunday.
Even there, they don't.
Yeah, pretty quiet. I just don't think there's a lot of juice. I think Seattle obviously is probably very different for obvious reasons.
Sure.
But this is Portland's football team, and I just don't get the impression anyone cares. It's tough. It's two teams that arrived way faster than anyone was expecting. I think like if you're a Patriots fan, you're very excited. If you're a Seahawks fan, you have to be like overly excited that you got here this soon. Like their defense is incredible. Sam Darnold, the bet on Sam Darnold and letting Geno Smith walk, like all of that was brilliant. But, from like how did the Wisconsin fans find an angle to get excited about this game? I just think you got to be excited that it's a Super Bowl and Super Bowl 60 is happening because there's not a ton of juice. Neither team is going to blow you away really doing anything. Both teams are just like fundamentally sound. I think like if you want to get excited about Drake May, awesome. JSN's cool. The Seahawks defense is incredible without really like pointing at one specific player. Like as a unit, they're fantastic. But does that make for a sexy Super Bowl? No,
not really.
No, it doesn't.
I think that too, for the casual fan, the fan that, doesn't have any emotion tied into teams that play in the Super Bowl in the last 15 years since the Packers are there. Usually it's been easy to hate watch one team specifically because you've had those staples, right? Brady, Mahomes, like you had those type of guys there that you either loved or you hated. And so that did make it a little bit easier for the casual fan to cheer for one team or another. I don't know who can look at Drake May or Sam Darnold and feel passionately one way or another. I will tell you, before we make predictions here, I am cheering for the Seahawks, and I'm cheering for the Seahawks with Sam Darnold because of the fact that the Vikings let him go. So that is, I've had to dig deep to try to find some type of motivation to care about this game and hate watching it because of a mistake that the Vikings would have then made. I mean, obviously they took a chance on JJ McCarthy. That did not pan out at all. And for them to now see that what they had and were so disappointed in just the playoff game that he had for the Vikings last year now turns into him going to the Super Bowl, but then winning the Super Bowl. He's on the stage holding the Lombardi trophy, knowing that everyone in Minnesota is just going, what are we doing as an organization? We let that guy walk. I would like to see that. I would mind seeing that.
That is a really good point, and one I had not considered, how much I will revel in the Vikings having to just live with the fact that the guy that let walk out the door won a Super Bowl immediately afterwards. To their credit, I don't think that the Vikings are positioned as well as the Seahawks were to win a Super Bowl this year.
Sure, of course.
But man, that will be funny. That will be funny. That is, you've got me juiced. I was planning on, I think the Seahawks, if we're actually talking about like X's and O's, I think their defense is smothering. I think their offense can get enough done. I think Sam Darnold has shown that he can operate within an offense a former Clint Kubiak offense, since he's probably going to become the Raiders head coach. Just kind of throwing news at you.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think this game is particularly close. I think like the Seahawks, I think ultimately proved to be one of the best teams in the NFL. And I think they're probably going to just go ahead and demonstrate that pretty comfortably against the Patriots.
That's super interesting. I think it will be closer than a lot of people think. And I think it all really does come down to Sam Darnold. I think if Sam Darnold doesn't turn back into a pumpkin at midnight and he can keep the Cinderella run going, then the Seahawks can come away with a win. I think that overall, the more consistent team is the Patriots. And I think that the Patriots, you know, if they just play a more steady game, they will win and beat Seattle. But I think that the higher risk, higher reward angle lands with Seattle in if Sam Darnold can stay who he's been for just one more game.
Alrighty, games tomorrow, Josh. Who do you got?
Who I want and who I think are two very different answers. I want the Seahawks. I think it's the Patriots. I think it's close. I think the Patriots win. I think I end up going, great, cool, a Patriots victory, awesome, just what we all needed to see. It's no different than than Roman Reigns headlining WrestleMania. Perfect. Thank you for that new narrative. Everything we needed. Patriots back on top. Puke. So I'm going to go Patriots win. I'm not going to like it, and I'm going to hope and pray I'm wrong, and I'm going to go 34-27.
Wow. Okay. I think the Patriots are more consistent. Consistently not as good as the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks win.
Oh, okay.
I think the Seahawks win 27-13.
Ooh, low scoring.
I think Drake May in this big of a game just will not be able to drive the ball downfield. I think they'll get a couple field goals, maybe one touchdown, maybe even late, but I think the Seahawks defense just kind of does what the Seahawks defense does.
Do you think that it's a turnover battle or a punt battle?
I think it's a punt battle. I think
so
really
a boring Super Bowl too.
I think it's going to be a very boring Super Bowl.
Puke.
Honestly.
Puke. So. Don't love that. Well, we'll find out who was right. And hopefully you were right, John, at least with who wins, because go Seattle. More importantly, go Giannis, go Bucks, go state of Wisconsin. I've got some energy, some juice, and revitalized for what Wisconsin sports can all be about. We can't wait to talk to you about more Wisconsin sports next time on Don't Tell Me How to Fan. Tune in because we're not done yet.